And welcome to another video. I hope I found you in a good mood today. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping you're in a good mood. You in a good mood? Don't you worry. Well, if you weren't, this ain't gonna put you in a worse mood. I promise you that, because I'm gonna help you out. So that's good. We have a video called Solve by Factoring. But here's the key. This is a disclaimer. A disclaimer. This video is actually not meant to teach you how to factor. So if you're wondering how to factor, that's a different video, right, called How to Factor. I got a bunch of those. This is about solve by factoring. All right, so you might learn how to factor, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about how to factor. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about how to solve. All right, well, let's go. A few things you need to know about solve by factoring. It's based on what's called the zero product property. That says if two values equal 0 and they're multiplied together, that means that one or the other has to equal 0. It's called the zero product property, and we're going to leverage that when we solve by factoring. What we're going to do is we're going to set it equal to 0, then we're going to factor, and factoring is the creation of multiplication, right? So then we're going to factor and have it equal to 0. That's what we're going to do. So let's do that right now. So our first thing, just like with the quadratic formula, this one's got to equal 0. So right now it doesn't equal 0, and that's the first thing that we have to fix. All right, so we got it equal to 0. We added 18 to both sides. Beautiful. Now we factor. You got to remember this. Not everything is factorable, and that's one of the weaknesses of solve by factoring, is that most things aren't factorable. Your textbook will do a really good job of giving you ones that are factorable, but we know, kind of using real numbers, real world relationships, messier numbers, things generally aren't going to be factorable like this, but here we go. So we'll factor it. So I'm going to go n and n. That's going to get me my n squared, my 18. 9 times 2 is not going to get me there, so it's probably 6 times 3. They're going to have to both be negative, right? So I'm going to switch this to a subtraction of 6 and 3. Okay, so here we're at this situation. We've got a product of two values, then they equal 0. And so all we got to do now is we say, okay, well, what value of n makes this one equal to 0? So you go n minus 3 is equal to 0. Oh, 3. Beautiful. That's one of our solutions. And over here you can think, well, all right, well, what value of n makes this one equal to 0? Well, it's going to be 6, right? Because 6 minus 6 is 0. And so we say, well, also n is equal to 6. And voila! Those are our two answers. We've got 6 and 3. You could try checking your solution. If you plug 6 back into this equation, you get 6 minus 6 times 6 minus 3. And that, in fact, is 0 equals 0, because 0 times anything is 0. Beautiful. So I would say our benefits of solve by factoring are that if it's a simpler one and in simple is only if you're good at factoring, but let's just assume that you can factor and you find one that's kind of simple, solve by factoring can be rather quick, rather than the Quadras method or the quadratic formula. And so if you can use it, go ahead and use it, all right? Let's try a different one. We could do the Quadras method straight up. Quadratic formula, we could do that too. It's got to equal 0. And solve by factoring, we could do that. It's got to equal 0. So this video is about solving by factoring. So let's make it equal 0. You see what I did there? I didn't show the step that time. I didn't show it like I did over here. But hopefully you can see how I subtracted 1 from both sides. Okay, so now you've got to factor it, and you could factor it using the box method. I mean, you know, the area method or the however you're going to do it. But you should get x and x, and you'll get 7 and 2, and they both got to be negative. Okay, so now what value of x makes this 0? 7. And what makes that 0? 2. Beautiful. Beautiful. So it's kind of nice, right? It's a nice method for solving if it works. But it doesn't always work. All right, let's look at another one. It'll probably work on a worksheet that says solve by factoring, by the way. All right, so let's take a look at this one. We're going to try to solve by factoring. So we got to first make sure it equals 0. It does equal 0. Now we've got to try to factor it. Okay, I wanted to kind of expose some of make sure you don't think everything is factorable. This is one you can't factor it. So we can't use the solve by factoring method. I don't even know necessarily if there is a solution. You know, sometimes there's a no solution situation. But we can't factor it, so then we've got to switch and do the quadratic formula or the Quadras method. So this one you could try, right? You could say 5 and 3, but you're never going to get to 10. This one definitely has 2 solutions, but even that one, you're really no better off. You're really not going to be able to factor it. But you do have the quadratic formula and the Quadras method, which work every time. All right, last little point. Let's go with this one. Just set it up just like that. Okay, so let's just assume we're solving this one. We've got it already equal to 0. All that's left is you factor it. Okay, so let's see. We've got the 5 and the 2. Okay, so there we go. And the only reason I brought this up is this is the one where you're going to have negative answers, right? Because what makes this 0? It's not positive 2. It's negative 2. Right? Negative 2 is what makes this one equal 0. And what makes that equal 0? And when I say that, I mean this parenthesis. Well, negative 5, not positive. Positive 5 makes this equal to 10. Right? If it's positive 5, it's 10 times 7. But if it's negative 5, it's 0 times negative 3. Right? Negative 5 times 3. And so here you get x is equal to negative 5. So be aware, right? You get the plus, and some students think, oh, the answer is positive because they see a plus. But no, that actually is going to indicate that the answer is negative because you're going to add and get to 0. So you must be starting below 0. You see what I did there? All right. You know, at the end of the day, be silly. Be honest, and never trust you, and always trust your cape. Always.